welcome to another episode of the Jarring Science Club. I'm your host, Brenda, and today we're learning about types of weather, which can be severe or mild. We will be making models of 4 different types of weather that can either be severe or mild depending on how intense it is. Today's activity is a science demonstration, not a science experiment. There are no variables to test. We're just making a model of weather types that occur in real life. All right, let's get to it. Here's what you need. To make your cloud, you're going to need a jar, a lid, some hot water. You can dye it if you like. Sometimes it's easier to see the cloud if you dye it. A bowl of ice water and some hairspray. To make rain, you'll need a jar of water, some regular white shaving cream, and some food coloring. To make your tornado, you'll need a jar with a lid, some dish soap, and some glitter. The last type of weather we'll be making today is a snowstorm. For this experiment, you will need a jar, a little bit of water, an Alka-Seltzer tablet, some baby oil, some white paint, and some food coloring if you like. All right, let's zoom in and get started. Okay guys, we're up close here, and the first weather jar that we're going to make is the cloud in a jar. So for this, you need to fill up the bottom of your jar with hot water. Add in a bit of food coloring. This just makes it easier to see the cloud when the cloud forms. Give it a nice little swish in there. All right, the next step is very important. You're going to have your lid ready. Spray in some hairspray. And then put the lid on to trap it in there. The hairspray particles are what the cloud will cling to. Now, we're gonna put our ice on top and wait for the cloud to form. And if yours doesn't form, then you may just need to heat up your bottom water more, because it works the best when you have very cold on top and very warm on the bottom, just like creating fog in the wild on Earth. It only forms when there's an extreme temperature difference between cold and hot. I'm going to change the angle of my camera so you can kind of see the cloud in there. If you look really close inside the jar, you can see all the air in there swirling around. And that's our cloud moving around inside the jar because of the different pressure changes between the warm water and the cold air on top. I think it's time to release it. All right, we're going to take the lid off our jar and see if our cloud escapes. There it goes. Now we're going to make our snowstorm in a jar. Now, I'm going to be using blue paint. Somebody ran off with my white paint and I can't find it. So our snow is gonna be blue. So let's give this a nice little stir. Okay, so you fill up the about to the first line in your jar with water, and then you dye it your snow color, which would typically be white, but we're doing blue because that's the paint I had. Fill up the rest of the jar a good bit of the way with baby oil, and then wait for those to separate. Next, you're gonna drop in your Alka-Seltzer tablet, and then you'll have your snowstorm begin. All right, let's drop in our tablet. I like to use little pieces at first. There we go. There's our blizzard. Now we can make it stronger. Look at that blizzard go. Okay, now we're gonna make our tornado model. And for this activity, it's best to have a jar that has all smooth inside and outside, like this old pickle jar. And you'll probably want a lid too to keep the mess down so you can spin your jar better. But this one's super easy. All you have to do is put in a couple of dabs of dish soap and then a few shakes of glitter. This is just so you can see the vortex a little easier. And I'm using green because sometimes the sky turns green when you got a tornado going. All right, so then you put the lid on tight. Give it an up and down gentle movement a couple times to get the glitter to mix in. And then you do a swirl, just like that. And try to do it in a circular motion until the vortex starts to form. Then you let it go. The last weather jar model we're going to make today is rain. We're going to represent how clouds hold water and then finally release them when they get too heavy. For this, you're going to fill up your jar mostly with water. Add a little layer of shaving cream on top, not too thick. You want to try to fill up most of the top, but not all of it. You want your rain to be able to get through. Then take your food coloring, which represents the rain and the water molecules, and you start dripping it on top of your shaving cream in different spots. We're filling up our rain cloud. Then, as it travels through the cloud and gets too heavy for the cloud to hold, it'll start hitting the surface of the water, just like rain. Here it comes. Here comes the rain. We made 4 examples of weather inside of jars. We made a cloud, we made a rainstorm, we made a snowstorm, and we made a tornado. Each of these 4 types of weather are commonly seen around the world at different times of year. Knowing what types of weather to expect in your area can help you prepare for day-to-day activities as well as how to prepare for severe weather. In some areas, you'll get severe weather like tornadoes caused by wind, hurricanes caused by a mixture of wind and air. If you live in a cold area, you might get a blizzard or a big snowstorm that's dangerous. So knowing what types of weather to expect in an area can really help keep people safe and be prepared when severe weather happens. Meteorologists and other scientists keep track of this information and share it with us so that we can stay safe. What makes weather happen? Weather is typically caused by a variety of factors such as the season, the location where you are on the earth, the sun, and the atmosphere. Commonly, there are about 8 different types of weather that we will see in most parts of the earth. Depending on where you live, you might get some of these more often or less often than others. One contributing factor to weather is the wind. Wind is caused by pressure changes in the atmosphere. Cold air is heavier than hot air. Cold air makes a high pressure area, while warm air makes a low pressure area. Because the earth likes to stay in balance, these 2 pressure systems will meet, and that usually creates a reaction between the high pressure and the low pressure, which causes a lot of weather. The more pressure difference there is between your cold and your hot, the faster the wind will blow. How wind moves across the earth is known as the Coriolis effect. Because the temperature of the earth is always cold at the north and south poles, there's always that high pressure there. And then in the middle of the earth, near the equator, it's always warmer, which creates a low pressure area. This constant battle between the cold air and the warm air causes wind to move across the earth. The rotation of the earth will also influence the travel pattern of wind. Next, we have precipitation, which is any type of moisture in the air. This can show up as snow, it can show up as sleet, it can show up as rain or frost, hail. Precipitation in the air comes from clouds. Clouds are bundles of small drops of water suspended in the air. When clouds get very heavy and full of these water droplets, the gravity and weight of the liquid causes the clouds to drop lower in the sky, which then turns the clouds back into a liquid. And depending on the temperature in the area, it will either fall back to earth as snow, rain, hail, or sleet. Clouds are the collection of evaporated water gas that accumulates up in the atmosphere where it's cold and freezing. You'll see clouds at high atmospheric levels where there are cold temperatures. And then as the clouds get bigger and heavier, they fall back closer to the surface of the earth and cause the rain and snow, as previously mentioned. Another type of weather is fog. The cloud in a jar we made is technically fog because it's inside of a jar and not up in the atmosphere. Fog is basically water vapor and droplets that have accumulated around something like dirt or mineral particles or something in the air that gives those water molecules something to cling to. In the case of our experiment, we used hairspray to kind of hold that bundle of air and water vapor together. Fog typically accumulates whenever there is a sudden temperature difference that occurs between warm and cold and makes that cloud form much closer to the surface of the earth. We also have thunderstorms, which are caused when moist, warm air rises suddenly. This is because the warm air rises quickly, hits that cold front very suddenly, which causes the thunderclaps. It can cause lightning to form and your typical rain and high winds. Lightning is actually caused by the particles inside of the different weather fronts hitting together at high velocity. The reason lightning can form is because the top of a thunderstorm has a positive charge, but the bottom has a negative charge. So when these two fronts hit and the particles collide, they create that electricity. We also have a hurricane, which is basically a thunderstorm that forms over water first and starts kicking up high winds, high pressure, which is influenced by the spin of the earth. These giant storms can then travel onto land and cause a lot of problems in coastal areas. Another type of severe weather is tornadoes, which is basically like a hurricane, but it's formed with air. Tornadoes are vortexes of air that spin very quickly and cause destruction where they travel. They can either stay up in the sky or they can touch down and destroy towns and buildings and cause a lot of damage and injury to people. If a tornado remains in the air, it's called a funnel cloud. The model of a tornado that we made was a vortex made from water because it's really difficult to create a vortex of air inside of a jar, so we represented it with water. Technically, the term for a tornado forming over water is called a waterspout. That's it for today. See you next time.